good morning. It depends on where you are in the country. Thank you for joining us for the Rainbow Push Coalition and Citizenship Education Fund's annual Media and Telecom Symposium. This year we're doing our symposium a bit differently this year due to the wake of this ongoing pandemic. I first want to thank all of our sponsors for participating in this particular session. I want to lift up the names of Verizon, Charter Communications, the Motion Picture Association of America, T-Mobile, and Comcast for supporting our efforts with the Rainbow Push Coalition. Our theme this year is charting a path forward for digital education and economic inclusion. Today, our session entitled Education and the Implications for the Educational Achievement of Black Students. But before we share in our panel discussion, we have another special guest, Ms. Randi Weingarten. She's been laboring in this field for a long time, in the educational space for a long time at the American Federation of Teachers. So we want to welcome her and invite her to give us opening comments and remarks.
Thank you, Steve. Let me kind of dive into something that I have been working on for several months. And frankly, we need an economic stimulus to deal with this. I have called as many of the telecom and internet companies as I can, personally begging them to actually get connectivity to kids. Like many of us on the panel, we have connectivity at home. I happen to spend $250 a month for connectivity at home. Tell me how many parents can do that for their kids. Tell me why, in a situation when we have 8 months of COVID, where we know that remote education has a role now and will ultimately have a role afterwards. And this is as the leader who has always said that remote education can't be a substitute, but we know it has a very important role and will have a really important role, just like telemedicine will have an important role. We need to make sure that kids don't just have MiFis or smartphones or things like this. We need to make sure that kids have connectivity, and we need to work on that together. And what it does is that this disproportionately, just like COVID, just like the health impacts, just like the issues about essential workers and the safety impacts, this disproportionately impacts Black and brown kids. So I want you to know you have an ally in this white girl who knows and sees every single day what is happening to our kids when we can't get them connected, when we can't get them back into school for in-person learning, knowing full well we need to actually make sure that we have the safety safeguards in order to do that. This is an opportunity with this new administration to change that. It's an opportunity in the first 100 days to actually get to a COVID stimulus that unemployment insurance, that helps small businesses, that makes sure that our Black and brown businesses do not teeter into bankruptcy, that makes sure that we have the wraparound services in our communities so we can deal with emotional and social issues, that makes sure that we open schools for feeding so we can feed people. There is an opportunity for a renaissance for public education and for a way of actually bringing communities together if we can get the kind of COVID stimulus that the President Trump wanted so much for the cruise industry and the airline industry, but not so much for people throughout America. So ultimately, if I sound urgent, yes, it's an amazing moment because of what's happening with a new administration who believes in Title I, who believes in IDA, who believes in community schools, who believes in economic prosperity for all. But I feel the same urgency as I know your panel does. Every single day, we cannot forsake this school year for kids, and we need to do things, including making sure we have the digital divide.
First and foremost, this pandemic has essentially upturned our basic functions, and now being connected matters. It not only matters in our schools, but it matters in every aspect of our full life as we plow through the public health crisis that we are in right now. And being connected also matters for those Black and brown families who, by the way, are more likely to be the frontline workers who are actually servicing this economy, Black and Latina families and households. But in addition to that, they are highly susceptible to the virus. And as a result of that, we're seeing now for Black Americans, COVID is listing at third at the top of chronic diseases after diabetes and pulmonary heart disease. And finally, we are now facing what I hope we'll talk about on this panel, the imminent threat of a revisit of the 1954 Brown versus Board of Education Act. And what do I mean by that? We have 50 million kids that were sent home in March, 15 to 16 million of them that did not have access at home or lacked an internet-enabled device. That is according to research by Common Sense Media. 9 million who didn't have either. And as a result of this lack of connectivity and equity existing among Black, brown, and beige children, we are now seeing that Black children, if they are not connected to any type of formal learning, will be behind 10.3 months in terms of cognitive retention. Latina students around 8+ months, low income, almost a year. So not only are we widening the educational gap or the educational achievement gap as educators know it, we are also widening the lack of opportunities that may be available to our young people. And what that future of industry looks like is what we're in right now. I mean, I'm a parent. I have a 14-year-old that half the time I don't know what she's studying. I don't know what she's doing because I'm down here on these Zooms. But I can tell you this, it has been difficult because not only are the kids lacking in opportunities educationally, they also have insecurities around food, housing, well-being checks, as well as, if it's not the pandemic, I had 2 superintendents on last week on a panel, it's the California wildfires. So we need to come up with a digital solution, my friends, because as one of the superintendents indicated to me most recently, we are losing kids by the hundreds because they cannot log in. They are now becoming virtually truant. They are missing from the registration rolls of schools. And I've got educators that can speak to some of that nuance. And it is becoming highly difficult to track their progress.
My name is Collazo. I'm the principal at Washington Leadership Academy. It's a public charter school that serves 9th through 12th grade in Washington, D.C. We serve Ward 5. The school demographics, we are 97% African-American and Latina. And we also have a population of students that are free reduced lunch at 90%. But right now, when it comes to like what learning looks like now versus what it looked like at the beginning in March, we've definitely adapted and changed and did different iterations. But one of the most key things that we had to address from the very beginning was that access and making sure that our students had provisions to make sure that they didn't have to just focus on like the actual just academics, but also we had to make sure that we were taking care of their their betterment, their well-being. So we made sure off the bat that we were able to provide them with food and services that they needed. So we were providing them food at first at the school. Thankfully now at this point, we're able to actually have delivery services for those foods so that they don't have to actually expose themselves through travel. And also at the same time, we had to see which parents or which family members had internet connectivity. So we actually surveyed them, we contacted them, reached out, text, email, any kind of forms of means that we can get in contact with them. And we basically just had a survey of seeing who needed internet access and how could we help them in that process. In some cases, we were able to actually use some of our funds to make sure that we paid off any bills that they had to make sure they were reconnected to the services that they already had. And that was our initial effort. And thankfully, that's helped us and provided a space for us in this current semester where those families that needed those connectivity problems solved originally were able to continue that through the summer and into this semester as well. I think just finally just thinking about it too, and like it's like the experiences overall, this has been, I mean, we use the word unprecedented all the time, it certainly is. But one of the things that I think has been essential for us as a school is to constantly adapt. In the very beginning, we did see that trickle off where even though we were providing our students with internet connectivity, even though like I think we were very much prepared. We are a school that focuses on computer science. So we gave all of our students Chromebooks that they could take home and bring to school when we were in person. So we already had those materials ready. We were very fortunate. But even with that, we did see a trickle off effect where it was really difficult to get students engaged and learning and just like with this new model.
What these children are dealing with is the pandemic, is the political world that was going on, and as well as I was saying before, so we had to look at the we thought about looking at developing cultural awareness. And when we talked about developing cultural awareness, the protest was the other one. We talked about developing cultural awareness. It wasn't just on a national scene, but then also from a local perspective, these students' home cultures. We had to take a look at those things too. And that also involved, and which took us back to what we're talking about now, this digital divide, what they're actually dealing with. But we're focusing on cultural awareness. And I know that's a term that's thrown around a lot nowadays, but not just in education, but in politics and in the media too. But in my experience teaching here, it is very important that our students understand who they are, what they're dealing with, and then how they can propel to be better than what they are viewed from a racial perspective. So yes, from culture, we're focusing on cultural awareness. The pandemic has caused us to do that. The protests has caused us to do that. And then the political environment has caused us to do that. And I do think that is shaping and molding our students to be, going back to what you spoke about earlier, Nicole, to being different and school being different than what it has been before. Because like I said, we're not just focusing on reading, writing, and arithmetic. We're having to have those conversations with these students. We're having to have those conversations not only with these students, but with staff members who may not look like our students and who do not understand what they're feeling, how they're feeling, and the emotional and mental toll that the George Floyd incidents and the Breonna Taylor incidents and what they're having on our students. So when you have a teacher that's coming in and saying, well, my father was the police, so I always side with the police, we need to have some conversations.
From my perspective, equity is definitely at the center, should be at the center of our work. But it's important that as we reach for and search for solutions, that we don't grab at simple solutions to a very complex problem. The reality is, for us to start trying to solve the equity problem by only dealing with culturally responsive training, and we need that. We need the culturally responsive training. We need awareness and all that. But the reality is, most of these issues come from an institution. And so the institutions that we create are built upon these concepts that are not built, where equity is not important. So it's institutionalized. And a lot of the things that we have in our systems are institutionalized, and our systems have systematized racism and equity and other discrimination. And so unless our solutions address not only the practical everyday work of the teacher, if they only stop there, then we fall short of the goal. We have to have an institutional and systemic approach to undoing some of these inequities and some of these systems of inequity that have been established for quite a while. And it takes everyone working toward that.
Go ahead, Reverend.
Yeah, I'm gonna repeat that. We're in a life and death genocidal issue here. This pandemic is real, really real. Yes, I was on the phone with people in Geneva. We're trying to get killing of Black people. The United Nations Commission on Genocide to address these killings of our people. That's a big issue. But in Chicago, we can't have funerals and weddings. Can't have Thanksgiving dinner together. Real stuff. We're in the middle of a germ warfare. So surviving is a big part about it. So just surviving the germ warfare. I don't know where it come from, but it's raging. So please, let's work on that together. And then you mentioned about education number 3 after pulmonary disease or something. Where's education on that list? I mean, COVID-19 is number 3. Where's education on this? We have not decided yet that we can or will. We must learn to read, write, and count, and think as a people. We work together. I always come in physically sometimes. Some of these boys, impact educators, these guys, they turn many voters out for the first time. Jackson voted for the first time, good stuff. But we've not decided to really deal with learning. That's kind of the point of view. Please, parents must bear the responsibility for notwithstanding.
Let's actually, we're doers at Rainbow Push. I mean, I work at Brookings, but I'm always an RPC fan for life. When you get your pen, you'll never lose it. It'll stay endeared to your heart.